In 1997, a man named Dave Longaberger walked into a meeting with his architects, set a picnic basket on the conference room table, and said, quote, "This is what I want. Can't do it? I'll find someone who can." And although the architects tried carefully to disobey their client's wishes by proposing alternatives, assumingly not wanting to sign their name to such a potentially tacky-looking project, Longaberger rejected them all. He wanted his company's headquarters to look exactly like its product. And the result speaks for itself. This building is what architects refer to as a duck, a structure whose form is its message. And the basket building is perhaps the most literal example found in America. So why did he do it? And how did the company later deal with the reality that a building which cost $30 million to construct sold for just $1.2 million? Stay tuned to find out as we uncover this strange story of the basket building. I'm your host, Ryan Sokash, and you're watching It's History. This story begins in a small village called Dresden, tucked into the rolling foothills of the Appalachian Mountains, where in 1896, the Longaberger family arrived. Back then, the town had 3 railroad stations, various mills, and a hotel on Main Street. Beyond that, the district was connected to the Ohio Canal system, making it a prosperous area to do trade. And there was one commodity, above all others, that was deeply tied to the town's identity. You see, Dresden was known for producing sturdy, utilitarian baskets that were used to transport things like ceramic throughout the region's booming pottery industry. Hence, in that context, Dave's grandfather, John, set up shop. His son, John Weldon, known as JW, started as an apprentice weaver at the factory in 1919, learning the trade from the bottom up. By the time of the Depression, JW had saved enough to purchase the factory outright for $1,900. He renamed it the Ohio Ware Basket Company and put all 12 of his children to work in some capacity. And Dave, the future owner of the basket building, was among them. Dave was born on December the 7th, 1934, as the 5th of those 12 children. He grew up in a household where basket making was not a craft, but a livelihood. Though it should be noted that it didn't come easy for Dave. He faced some serious obstacles. He stuttered, he had epilepsy, and so his formal education was so disrupted that he didn't receive his high school diploma until 21. And so even Dave didn't realize his own potential. In fact, he later described himself as, quote, the least likely to succeed. By the early 1970s, something was shifting in the American consumer market. Mass-produced goods had dominated for 2 decades, but another counter-movement was also forming, a nostalgia for handmade objects, a desire for things that carried evidence of human labor. And I know that you guys can appreciate this since we're currently going through a very similar evolution with AI slop versus human-made content. By the way, I'm real. Anyhow, Longaberger saw an opportunity, and by 1973, he incorporated his new company in Dresden, named JW's Handwoven Baskets in honor of his father. 3 years later, he found a building to expand into. Rather romantically, he chose the old mill where his mother had previously worked. Although it was built in the 1890s and vacant since 1955, he decided to set up shop there. The roof was sagging and the windows were all broken. Dave imagined a return to the town's glory days, with hundreds working inside, so he renovated. Once the operation was up and running, from 1978 onward, each basket crafted there was dated and signed by the individual weaver who made it. And in many ways, it was that sole decision that transformed the product from a household item to something collectible. Longaberger priced accordingly, with baskets ranging from roughly $25 to as high as $125. Though the distribution strategy was the real engine, the sales network was built on the home party model, the same mechanism that had previously made Tupperware a household name. Cleverly, he enlisted independent sales associates, the majority of them women, to host parties in their homes and sell directly to friends and neighbors. From there, associates recruited other associates and earned a percentage of their commission. Things went on like this for years, and although you might feel tempted to see it as a pyramid scheme, which, let's face it, it kind of is, it was actually a very clever way to skip the dangerous cost of things like marketing. By 2000, the company employed more than 8,200 people directly and had approximately 45,000 independent distributors. In that context, it didn't take long before annual revenue crossed $1 billion. Accordingly, Forbes listed the company among the 500 largest private firms in the US back then. And the company diversified. The product line had also come to include things like pottery, fabrics, and home accessories. And so Dave Longaberger had been right about the market, right about the product, and right about how to reach people who would buy it, which is why at the peak of his success, he decided to build the ultimate basket. By multiple accounts, the design process was contentious from the start. The architects proposed several concepts that acknowledged the basket motif without committing to it literally. Longaberger rejected them all. Story goes, he picked up a medium market basket, put it on the table, and told the people in the room to replicate it exactly, remarking, quote, "If they can put a man on the moon, they can certainly build a structure that's shaped like a basket." Though, to be fair, the engineering challenges were real. You see, a basket tapers outward as it rises, with a narrow base and a wider top, which is the inverse of how large buildings are typically structured. And to satisfy the client, the basket building had to taper that exact same way. Despite the challenges, the team delivered in the end, and the results were astonishing. The second floor contains approximately 20,000 square feet, whereas the seventh floor contains 25,000. So every floor really is wider than the one below it. The steel framework achieving this geometry is concealed beneath these stucco panels, each measuring 6 feet by 30 feet, formed to reproduce the woven splint pattern of an actual basket. As for window placement, well, that was restricted to the vertical splint locations so as to not break the visual pattern. The handles are made of painted steel with copper-toned rivets, matching the actual hardware of the original product. Let's not forget the 2 gold leaf tags, exact replicas of the labels attached to every Longaberger basket sold. And although those items were challenging to mount, the handles were actually the most demanding element, with each one weighing 75 tons. They arch over the building's full width, above a 4,000 square foot glass atrium skylight, and when first proposed, were thought to be impossible, since Ohio winters presented an obvious problem. Ice, forming on steel handles directly above a glass ceiling, created a serious safety hazard. Though engineers resolved this by embedding heating elements inside each handle to keep the surface just warm enough to prevent any ice accumulation. With the blueprints in place, groundbreaking was in 1995, and the building was completed in 97 at the final cost of $30 million. In December of that same year, 500 employees of the company moved in. Dave Longaberger passed away in 1999 at the age of 64. His daughter Tammy was named chief executive the previous year and took over the company. Under her reign, the company appeared durable early on, with revenue still climbing. Furthermore, the basket building became a tourist attraction of its own right. Drivers would stop off Route 16 to simply confirm what they were seeing, but unfortunately, those glory days wouldn't last forever. Basically, the conditions that built the company were reversing. The home party sales model had worked during a specific cultural movement, the 80s and the 90s, when baby boomers were accumulating decorative objects and before digital commerce had given consumers an alternative to in-person social selling. Then, a recession hit in 2001, and online retailers accelerated. This is where those fancy baskets, priced at $80, became harder and harder to justify, when cheaper alternatives were just a click away. The company did hold out for a while, but by the 2008 financial crisis, the damage compounded. At that point, things got so bad that they stopped paying property taxes on the headquarters. By 2016, the basket building was vacated. The Longaberger Company filed for bankruptcy in 2018 and ceased operations entirely. And for the most part, all that remained was that basket building. In December of 2017, before the bankruptcy was ever finalized, Ohio developer Steve Kahn purchased the building for $1.2 million. Plus, he paid over $800,000 in outstanding back taxes. In other words, this work of art that cost $30 million to construct had sold for roughly cents on the dollar. By October the 20th, 2019, Khan's team decided to open the building for a single public tour in partnership with Heritage Ohio, the state's official historic preservation organization. More than 600 people came. They drove from across Ohio and some as far away as 4 hours. Joyce Barrett, the executive director of Heritage Ohio, told the press that some visitors, former employees, were in tears. The following day, Khan announced plans to convert the building into a 150-room luxury hotel with an indoor pool and a restaurant, targeting a 2020 opening. Though the pandemic, I'm sure you guys remember, ended those plans. The hotel deal collapsed, and a subsequent bankruptcy proceeding further clouded the building's ownership picture. So, as of writing this, the Basket Building stands vacant, its future unresolved. Heritage Ohio, for their part, has pursued for a National Register of Historic Places designation, despite the fact that the structure itself is barely 30 years old, which is a highly unusual timeline for historic preservation on that level, though it counts as a measure of how quickly the building's cultural significance became apparent to the people who care about it when its future was uncertain. Former company president Jim Klein put the situation plainly, recalling, quote, "The big basket is like the St. Louis Arch. It's a really important part of Ohio history." Whether that argument proves sufficient to secure the building a second life remains to be seen. Although Dave and his company are gone, the basket is still there. And I don't know about you, but I, for one, am rooting for things to remain that way. We'll leave it there for today, but I thank you all for joining me. And until next time, this is Ryan Sokash, signing off.